John Langley and Malcolm Barber, my then very good friends, called me and they said, we'd like you to work on the show. I said, well, great, weekly paycheck. The premise of the show is it's a ride along in a police car, and we did this in over 120 different jurisdictions around America. I spent 8 years in a police car, believe it or not. Had an incredible amount of fun, and the way I approached it was John made me the producer of the show, and I was also the lead cinematographer on it. The way I approach it, I approach it as a French cinema verite movie with instant casting. So you go to a situation and you look around. Oh, there's the mother-in-law, there's the guy, there's the dead guy, there's this, there's that. Okay, and you look around and you figure out who the characters are going to be that you do the story with, which I now call instant casting. And then not interfere in anything. You couldn't interfere in anything, no desire. So for me, it was an incredible, brand new art form. And John Langley said to me one thing, which was brilliant. He says, never bring a tripod. I don't want to have any tripods on the show. It was brilliant, I mean, and I didn't quite trust it because I was still a little bit of a tripod guy at times because it was beaten into us in our life. But the whole show was shot handheld, and all the running and all the jumping over the fences and following the people and getting shot at and getting beaten. I mean, I got whacked by with a 2x4 out cold. I mean, you name it. We were in the middle of combat, and it was a fantastic experience. I don't know off the top of my head how many shows I've produced and shot for John and Malcolm, but it's in the hundreds. It was a lot of fun, and I saw the dark side of America in many, many ways, until a point came that people said, there's a lot of violence in television. There's a tremendous amount of violence, and there was a lot of journalists, and they asked me, they said, it's very violent what you guys do, which to a degree was actually true. We were going for it. And I said to the guy, never forget, I said, violent, Cops is not a violent show. Cops is a comedy. And everybody understood what I was saying, right? And yeah, it is, in many ways, it is a comedy. Well, because there's a lot of humor in a show like this. There's a tremendous amount of misunderstandings and stupidity and more stupidity. So yeah, there's a lot of humor in that world, I must say. In addition to there's tragedy. There's people that.
You mentioned John Langley. Tell us a little bit about working with him.
It was a lot of fun working with him. He left me completely alone. Never really interfered in any shape or form.
And talk a little bit about working with Jerry Bruckheimer on the show.
Well, Jerry and I, through Jonathan Littman, CAA, actually our agency, said Jerry wants to get into television. This is how it was explained to me. And he wants to talk to you. I said, well, Jerry Bruckheimer is a very big movie producer, and I'm a little TV guy. But the CAA and everybody insisted we talk. I said, what am I going to do with Jerry? I mean, there's nothing. But the reality was that we all hit it off tremendously, and that we have the same, if I may say so, we have the same taste for things, and we like the same things on many levels. And I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity, because in those days, reality television didn't exist as we know it now. 12 years ago, 13 years ago. It's hard to imagine it didn't exist. Not in the long form. It existed in the Cops form, in very short bursts of 3-minute storytelling. But now we tell a story over 12 hours. I said, you know what? The combination of what I do, the reality that we are used to, and that we have now sold to a major primetime network, being CBS, and Les Moonves, who has faith in this genre. Combine that with a movie maker as Jerry, we can all learn from each other, and we can do something fantastic together. And that's really what we have done. I mean, Jerry is not involved in the sense on a day-by-day basis, but I can call him anytime, and we talk, and we have, and there's a fantastic relationship between their company, Jonathan Littman, who's a very dear friend of mine, who runs their television business, and my company, World Race Productions and Profiles Television. we're separate entities, but we're family, and I think we've learned a lot from each other, and you know, these guys come up with some phenomenal suggestions, and and when we go on stage and pick up an Emmy, it's not so bad either, you know. So it's been, you know, I think it's important that we raise the bar with reality television, because yeah, it has evolved in many different offsprings of all kinds of stuff, you know. That there's room for everybody, I'd say that, but I like to keep the bar pretty high, and as a result, I just did a new series also with Brian Grazer and Ron Howard. We did The Great Escape, where we really tried to raise the bar, you know, for TNT. So I think it's very valuable to work with people of the movie genre together with us and make it better.
When I did meet Bertram and we started talking about what we both did, he told me that he worked on a show called Cops, and I thought, oh God, I don't watch that show. It's a show about, you know, it's not a great show. It's a show about, you know, drug dealers and, you know, domestic violence, and it's just, I felt quite a negative show. And, you know, I lived in New York City. I lived in Brooklyn for a little while. I lived in all different neighborhoods, and I just thought, why would I want to come home at the end of the day after a long day of working or whatever goes on, seeing homeless people or just seeing things every day, that you're going to sit down and now watch a show of more of that. I just found it kind of depressing. And it was interesting because when I used to talk to him about the places that he had been to in America, because they went all over the country for that show, I remember saying to him, you know, I've never been to Vegas. Have you ever been to Vegas? I hear Vegas is fun. They have all these shows, and I'm not a gambler, but I thought the shows could be kind of fun. He's like, oh, you don't want to go to Vegas. It's drug dealers and prostitution. And, you know, he was going through this laundry list of, like, you know, how dangerous it was. And I realized that he had seen all the negative sides of these cities around the country and actually hadn't seen some of the more beautiful sides of these cities. And I thought, this can't be good for your head, you know? And I started telling him that. And I think it struck a chord. And I think after realizing for 9 or 10 years of being in these police cars and filming all these horrible things and tragedies, some of the stuff that you can't even show on television, it has an effect on you, as it does to the police officers also. You know, it's not a positive thing. They do positive things and they try to help people, but sometimes people don't want to be helped, and you can see that happening. And I think it really took its toll on him, and he was also traveling all the time. He'd be on the road for 6 to 8 weeks at a time and come home for a week and a half and go back out again. So I was very excited when he sold this Wild Things pilot, because I thought it was a very positive thing and it showed a better side of society, people in a positive light, people helping animals, and I couldn't wait for him to do something different. It was time. You know, we just met at the right time. He was ready to do something different. I met him. I kind of pushed him to move on, and you know, he had been producing for many years. He also came from a cameraman director background, and he's super smart. And I just thought he should be running his own show, and that's what he was doing. So I was excited to have him move on from that.